Hi there, I'm Captain Jim, and today I'm going to review the TV show The Expanse. Wait, isn't that a book series? I'm sure I saw a video by a particularly clever and good-looking guy. Yes, you did see a video by a particularly clever and charming guy talking about the book series The Expanse, and in fact, in that video, he did discuss that there was an upcoming TV show. Yeah, but it was so long ago I've forgotten all the details. Yeah, well, what are you going to do about it? I thought I might make some sarcastic comments just to point out that we know about it. I'm going to go and watch the video again. I might be better late to take the piss. Oh, that's really helpful. That's great. Thanks very much. Cheers. So now that asshat is gone, we could crack on with the business of the day. So since this is a review, I'll do my very, very best to make it spoiler-less and just talk about the themes of the show and the acting styles and what I like about it without ruining any of the plot. But once you have gone and seen it, and you really, really should, I will be making a spoiler-full discussion of the entire first series, so we can talk about the whole series and also the differences between that and the book. So the show The Expanse has 10 episodes so far on one season, which was aired starting in December 2015 and ending in February 2016 in the US on the Syfy channel. It's had no official release anywhere else in the world, for reasons that nobody can work out yet, but it is available on the Expanse YouTube channel, which you can find a link to here somewhere, all to watch on YouTube, and of course less reputable online sites are available as well. Now, like we've said, it is based on a book series. The series is called The Expanse, and so far has 5 books, and a 6th one is coming out in November. And you can check out my review for that by following this link here. Now, let's just set the scene a little bit before we get on to the show itself specifically. So it's set about 200 years in the future. Humanity spread out into the solar system, but don't think of Star Trek. There's no warp drives, there's no Klingons, there's no artificial gravity, there's no Federation. It's just people doing their thing out in space. You have to accelerate or rotate to get gravity, for example. So Earth is unified under the United Nations, and Mars has become an independent power known as the Martian Congressional Republic. Now these are the two main superpowers in the system, and Mars has kind of more advanced technology and more money, and is primarily working towards terraforming Mars as its main goal as a society. Earth, meanwhile, obviously has access to the only self-sustaining biosphere, i.e. the Earth, and also obviously a lot more people and resources, so bigger fleet, but it's more ageing compared to the Martians. There's also a lot of people that live out in the rest of space, and these two planets kind of rely on the resources of the rest of the system, which predominantly come from the asteroid belt and the moons and satellites of Jupiter and Saturn. And the people that live out there are kind of colloquially known as belters, and they've been living in these low and zero gravity environments for 3 or 4 or even 5 generations, and so it's kind of changed their bodies quite significantly. They're much taller, they have much weaker muscles and bones. In fact, they kind of require drugs when they're young in order to just develop them at all. But they are more graceful in the low gravity and the zero gravity environments.
There's tremors, man. It's from growing up in low G. Your muscles don't develop right.
I guess that's from generations in low G, huh? Someday, say every belter is gonna look just like that.
Additionally, they've kind of developed their own language, a patois of all the various languages they've taken out there with them. So predominantly English, Hindi, Mandarin, Spanish, and Russian being the main one.
Every time we demand to be heard, they hold back our water, aqua bentanoda, ration our air, and aloof bentanoda, until we crawl back into our holes, imbobo bentanoda, and do as we are told. Day's coming soon, Kea. And when the bullet is on the wall, Sasake, which side you're on?
Yeah, I'll know.
See you then. Well, voila.
So you'll hear lots of belters talking these various different forms of patois. which can be a bit confusing.
What is Well Walla?
Traitor to my people.
Now, the last bit I want to mention before we move on to the show is that there's an increasing and growing independence movement for the Belters, headed by an organisation known as the Outer Planets Alliance, or OPA. And depending on who you would ask in the system, they would be represented by called different names. You know, there might be an independence movement, it's a political section, dissidents, perhaps terrorists, freedom fighters. That's pretty much an overview of the history without going into the detail, without causing any spoilers or talking about the books. So they have changed the plot slightly. There's two main areas. They've kind of merged the first two books because they're a kind of overlapping story, which is good. And also there's some slight changes in the way the story is told, or bits or pieces have been altered in order to make it better viewing. That's good because, one, I don't always know what's going to happen in the TV show, which was a problem with the first few series of Game of Thrones. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Plus, you know, it's developed it as a better show and added theme. Now it follows kind of three sets of people whose stories all slowly coming together, as you'll see in the show. So the first character we follow is a detective called Joseph Miller, who's played by Thomas Jane, and he is a Belter who lives on the Ceres station and is a detective, and he's basically starts off, he's got a new partner who's from Earth, so he's an Earther and kind of sticks out in the belt.
You are never gonna pass for a Belter. The time they look at you, they're always gonna see Earth.
And also he's given this case at the beginning that he has to go and find this woman, Juliet Mao, who's gone missing. So he's tasked with going to find her.
So what's my contract exactly?
Find Julie Mao if she's still here on Ceres, detain her and ship her home.
Kidnap job. My pleasure.
So the second character we follow is Christiane Avalasala, and she's a UN politician who is kind of actually sort of third or fourth in line for running the UN.
Mama, do you have to go?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. There's someone I need to talk to.
Are people fighting again?
Not yet. That's why we need to talk and tell the truth. When people don't tell the truth, it always ends badly.
And she's kind of finding out that there's this political intrigue going on as well, and she's trying to find out what's happening, and sometimes being various people getting involved or not as in the political spectrum. So she's following from the point of view of Earth and seeing what's going on there. So the other storyline that we follow is centred around a guy called Jim Holden. Now he's an Earther, but he works out on a ship called the Canterbury, which is an ice hauler. So that goes from Ceres out to Saturn, picks up the ice from the rings of Saturn and takes it back to Ceres so they can have water to drink and bathe and all that kind of stuff. It also follows several other characters on the ship with him. So Naomi Nagata, who's kind of the chief engineer, and she's a Belter. A guy called Amos Burton, who is also an engineer and kind of works for her really. And he's actually an Earther, but he's been out in the belt for 20 years or something. A guy called Alex Kumal, who's a Martian. And we'll discuss him in a little bit as well. And a guy called Shed Garvey, who is a Belter, I believe, who's the medic on board the ship. And they receive a signal, a distress call that ends up getting them involved in all of this as well. So I said briefly that I'd pick up on Alex again. So he's a Martian from an area called the Marinas Valley. And basically the colonists that moved there was approximately 1 million people from India, 1 million people from China, and about 1,000 Texans went there. And so everybody is mostly of Indian and Chinese descent, but somehow the Texan accent became viral and everyone has this thick Texas drawl. Quite nice.
How we looking, kids? It's easy as pickling eggs,
So the characters are pretty good. There are slight changes, some of them, between the book series and the way they're told. Jim Holden's a little bit different. You know, Amos Burton's a little bit different as well. But they're pretty close to the way I envisioned them in the book series, other than vague physical differences, of course. But they're well acted. All the actors actually in the show are really good, and there's some big actors who come up later in it as well as other parts who you'll recognise from various other places. Fringe and The Walking Dead, for example, and Breaking Bad. So do keep an eye out and see who you can spot wandering around in it. There is a scene for the eagle-eyed view as well that actually has the two writers from the book series. That's these two guys. As they walk through in the scene, so I spotted that one. That's quite a nice little Easter egg. So I like not only the characters, the acting is excellent in there as well. The way that they've done the ship design in there as well is very good, so that you've held the claustrophobic nature of the ships, you know, that you get from places like Alien as well, things like that, where it's very small ships and people crammed on this ship. They've managed to copy over the gravity particularly well. So gravity is only generated in space when you're either rotating it to centrifuge people out, so that's how it's generated on series, for example, or when you're under thrust, so when you see the ships start accelerating, then they create gravity, and as soon as they go ballistic, drift, or stop, then there's no gravity, and everyone uses magnetic boots that are in their feet in order to hold to the deck. But they've done quite well, so you can see things floating around if they are using the magnetic boots. So that's pretty cool. You know, there's pretty good realistic physics in there. What else can I say without ruining it? It's a cracking bit of sci-fi, up there with Battlestar Galactica and Game of Thrones in its style and the way that they've envisioned and created a show and a believable world. I've been describing it to people, I think quite accurately, as Space of Thrones, which sounds slightly better than Game of Space. Because it's that kind of just people in a political environment, you know, in a real environment, but in fantasy, or in this case a sci-fi world, that's perfectly envisioned, and it's real people with real problems doing the best that they can to survive or get by. So if you enjoyed Battlestar Galactica, if you like sci-fi at all, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, it's definitely worth going to check out this show. The characters are brilliantly developed, they're very well acted and thought out, and they do kind of talk and communicate and act in the way that real people do, which is something that's carried over from the books very well. The world itself is envisioned very well, and while it's slightly different from the book, that's not a problem. It makes a good show to watch, and much more fast-paced and easier to get into it. The sets are well developed. There's lots of physical sets that they have on there as well, and they do have this claustrophobic feel of being on the ships and the space stations. Developed the way that they've done the graphics for looking at the ships for the people in zero gravity or when they're in low gravity. That looks really good and is really well developed. And loads of little bits that they have in the background from the books are carried over into the TV show. So catch an eye out for little things. There's a little bird that lives on the Sirius station, for example, and you see him flapping around, but he just flaps his wing for a little bit and then hovers, and then flaps it a little bit and hovers to kind of show that there's the low gravity. So little touches like that in people's hair and things like that, it works out well. So I definitely recommend you go and see this show. Find it from whatever internet-based or television-based source you're most comfortable with. But it really is very good, and it was commissioned before it was even released for a second series. Syfy have made a long-term commitment to make more of this, which is why I don't quite understand that they're not showing it to the rest of the world, but that's their decision, I suppose. And there's plenty of books in the sea. So once you have seen it, go and check out the video discussing the whole series and its differences to the book. That would be really cool. If you enjoyed this video, please press like. You're welcome to leave comments. Let me know what else you'd like me to review. And subscribe if you'd like to see more. Captain Jim out. Oh, you're gone. I was going to come back and take the piss. Yeah, shit, you dick. Oh, also, isn't calling somebody a belter in Dundee mean it's like slang for calling them an idiot? Just saying.